Good evening. I'm Kathy Van Ness from the Golden Door. I am so excited to be here with Laura Callanan. I'm going to say that right. I'm going to keep practicing. She is an expert about social consciousness and social innovation and how companies can make a difference in a way that we haven't thought enough about. And specifically, not only just in things that we care about in diseases, but in arts and in artists and in causes and people that are doing really unique things that would make a difference in our lives as we go along. Laura was a consultant with McKinsey & Company's Social Sector Office. She was the executive director of the Prospect Hill Foundation. She's an associate director of the Rockefeller Foundation, where in addition to her responsibilities, she managed the endowment and co-led the foundation's first impact investing efforts, which included 2 investments in the new creative economy, Smithsonian Folkways Records and NetOmat. Laura is the founding partner of Upstart CoLab. Upstart is disrupting how creativity is funded by connecting impact investing to the creative economy. She was a senior deputy chairman of the National Endowment of Arts, leading all grant making and operations research. It's a lot, sounds like a lot, before launching Upstart CoLab in 2015. This is going to be really fun. Of all the people we had, I think this is a really intelligent conversation and one of the kinds of conversations we're having out there today. Upstart launched in 2015. Get this, with 25 artists, 25 social innovators, 25 impact investors, not just investors, but investors who want to make a difference. How did you select that first creative project that you funded?
Well, what you're describing, Kathy, is our launch event, which was hosted by Yo-Yo Ma and happened at the Ford Foundation. And it was an experiment. We thought that artists, impact investors, and social entrepreneurs had a lot that they could share with one another, that they should be working together more than they were. And we didn't know what would happen if we got these 3 groups of people in a room together, and we did for a day. They found great common ground. They found a lot that they shared between them in terms of how they think about solutions to pressing problems, how they think about capital to be able to do good in the world, how they have fun and share their imagination and are curious about things. And so that event, that day-long event, helped us to understand that we were really onto something, and that our mission to enable creative people to do their work at scale, we thought it could go someplace.
Wow. Why is the creative economy an important part of the health of our communities? It's something we've been talking about a lot this year, is the communities. What happened to our communities?
Well, the creative economy, maybe I'll just describe it a little bit. I mean, we use a definition that maybe sounds a little dull. The creative economy is the economy of art and design and culture and heritage. It can include food and fashion and media, a whole list of creative businesses. And so that's how we think about it when we're talking to impact investors. But there's a whole body of work. It goes by the name creative placemaking, and this gets to what you're thinking about. This is looking at the fact that art and design can play a very special role in communities. It can be the source of business and economic development, which means jobs for people, right? It can help the community be more resilient. So if there's a natural disaster, it will allow that community to respond in a strong way and build back better after a natural disaster. Obviously, art and design contribute significantly to the quality of life in our communities. There are a number of ways that creativity, community, they go together.
You know, artists get so underappreciated sometimes. Did you find was it hard for the artists to get their ideas out there, to be able to commute to the non-artists that instantly sort of like discount them?
Yeah. So it's interesting. I started on this journey about 5 or 6 years ago, and there's a big conference that happens in San Francisco in October, and it's all about bringing together social entrepreneurs and impact investors. And 5, 6 years ago, I brought 5 artists, really fantastic artists. They were part of a fellowship program called Creative Capital, very competitive. So these were great folks that had been hand-selected as the ones who were being most entrepreneurial in their work. And we brought them there, and they went to a boot camp for the social entrepreneurs the couple days before the conference started. And I saw them at the end of the boot camp, and I said, so how was it? Did you have like the best weekend of your life? And I was waiting, of course, for them to thank me that I had made this opportunity available to them. And they said, you know, we're very good at talking about our work. We know how to talk to museum directors and art collectors and gallery directors. And we're in this very different community with these social entrepreneurs, and we would start to talk about what we do, and that their eyes would glaze over and they'd walk away. And a lot of my work in the last 6 years has been to solve that problem, because these creative people, they're very, when they start a business as a way to take their ideas to scale, it's a human-centered business. It's a socially responsible, social purpose business, and so they're looking for capital that understands and shares those values.
Can you explain the pillars of a creative economy and why it's important for the health of our communities?
Well, it's a little bit of what I was just describing, the economic development, the quality of life, the resiliency. These are the things that creativity can contribute to communities. We've been doing a lot of work with partners who are leaders in low-income communities. Community development finance institutions. Think of them as nonprofit banks. They were set up to go in where conventional banks can't make enough money, so oftentimes they're not there providing mortgages or loans or car loans, things like that. And community development finance institutions fill that gap. They've been working in low-income communities in the United States for the last 40 years. They're probably in every city and state represented in this room. And we helped them to realize that they had been investing in creative places and creative businesses as a part of their comprehensive community development strategy. It just shows that that arts are not an elite issue, that creativity is something that happens everywhere, and that communities that may not appear to have a lot of assets from an economic perspective, they still have culture, heritage, tradition. They still have their food. They still have their holidays. They still have their music, their stories. That's a really strong asset.
Are you finding the impact somewhat focused on specific regions, or are you finding that impact can be across?
Everywhere. So we've been assembling a list, a pipeline of investable opportunities in ethical fashion, sustainable food, social impact media, other creative businesses that don't fit into those first three categories, and real estate, creative places. And we've made an effort to see that, there's New York and there's San Francisco, right? And you would imagine that a lot of creative activities happening in those two places, but what about everywhere else? Yeah. And I can talk about projects in Maine, I can talk about projects in Alabama, I can talk about projects in the Hudson Valley of New York, I can talk about projects in Seattle and Chicago, and to me that speaks to the importance of this and the fact that it is not just in a few lucky places, that creativity and culture is an asset in every community.
This is a great minds don't think alike. To unlock maximum performance, not only in ourselves, but in others, organization and companies must harness both cognitive diversity and creativity. That means adding a new voice to our sort of vocabulary in thinking. And you're calling this the artist innovator. Can you explain that role?
Well, there are artists who, when we think of artists, we think of someone who goes into a studio, shuts the door, puts on his or her beret, stands at an easel and paints a picture, right? And that's what we composes music or writes a book or any of those sorts of things. And of course, artists do this. Increasingly, artists are going beyond what's called a studio practice. They're going beyond the theater, the concert hall, the museum, and they want to be more engaged with their community. They look at the world around them. They are creative people. Creative people solve problems. They can't help themselves, and they want to take their ideas and go out into the world. That's called a social practice, right? You leave the safety of your artist studio and you go out into your community, and as the artist, you have to give up a bit of your autonomy because you are in service of your neighbors, but you are engaging with them. Then we see the phenomenon where creative people say, I have a business idea, and because I care about my neighbors, it's a social purpose business idea. And now it's in a completely different realm. It's not the artist making the beautiful object or composing the music or writing the book. It's that person who brings all of their aptitude, their natural skill, all of their training, and all of their experience, and they bring that to solve a problem in the world, and then they want to hire people who share their values. They want to bring investors into the company who share their values, and that's what we talk about when we say socially responsible or impact investing. These are investments. They're not gifts, they're not grants, they're not donations, they're investments. The goal is to make money, but not at any cost. It's to make money while you're honoring the environment, while you're treating your workers fairly, and while you as a business are a member of your community.
Do you find, this is sort of an interesting question as you take me to, do you find with the lack of dramatic art and creativity in schools, does that hurt the sort of momentum of innovation? Does that limit the amount of people who actually can think about that?
So my friends who have kids, who are in high school or below, those kids are being exposed to all of these things that are expression of the innovation, entrepreneurial culture we're living in now. They're prototyping things. They're ideating new solutions to crazy things. Like one friend's kid was figuring out that he could make paper airplanes and shoot them with rubber bands. Not that that was a unique idea, right? But that this was gonna be his innovation, and he was gonna sell this to his friends in school. And the kids are being taken through what's called Lean Launchpad, or there are all these things that you learn in business school about how you imagine something, then how you test your idea, and then how you practice your idea, and eventually hopefully take it to scale. So that's happening, and that feeds a certain type of creativity. It's not necessarily the blue sky thinking of the artist, but it certainly is feeding a certain type of creativity.
Cognitive diversity, or diversity of thought, I love this, and I believe in it completely, improves effectiveness and problem solving. How does creativity unlock the same effectiveness?
So researchers at Columbia and Harvard and elsewhere have demonstrated that heterogeneous teams solve harder problems better and faster. And so we grabbed onto that research and to that idea to say, well, it's not just men and women on the team, it's not just people with different demographic backgrounds on the team, it's people with different perspectives, cognitive abilities, cognitive diversity is on the team. And if you think about it, maybe you need a lawyer, maybe you need a doctor, maybe you need an economist, maybe you need a marketing person, but maybe you need that out-of-the-box thinker, which is how we imagine our artists to be, our truly creative folks to be. And we did a piece of research, which is what you're referring to, and we looked at how artists do their work and how that's transferable to great businesses and other types of activities, business, government, social sector work. And we found some great examples of people who have represented that artist who can cross over, and whether that's Leonardo da Vinci or George Washington Carver or Václav Havel, there are all these very interesting examples that you sometimes forget that they're actually artists when they become the president of the Czech Republic, but yeah.
Oh my goodness. This is going to be interesting for me, and we talked about this a little bit before. The Golden Door, and you might not know this will be maybe new information for all you as well. The Golden Door invests deeply in environmental causes and children's abuse domestically. We are on the ballot, if you can imagine, 2020 on environmental issues having to do with greenhouse gases, poor water management, all kinds of issues. We actually went out and raised 117,000 signatures, something I've never done in my life. It's pretty amazing, and we've been doing a long battle, which will begin to end next year. We feel very good about it. We're in a referendum for environment, poor water planning, as I said, greenhouse gases, offset issues, which we have serious problems with. We gave up plastic water bottles in 2013. We see companies all the time using the charity lines or the giving lines or the compassionate lines like, buy my things and you'll get $1 off. Come to my place this weekend only and you'll get something for free. At Golden Door, we actually never talk about this outside. People may be reading it somewhere or it'll be on a piece of paper somewhere, just so you know. We don't think it's a marketing tactic. But the question is if you wanted to have a social heart and a social consciousness, how do you actually know? At the end of the day, just the concept that someone says they have something that is a wellness brand and you go check all the ingredients, only 25% of the ingredients are allowed to be, are okay to be well. All 75% of the ingredients can be unhealthy. How do you actually get to know that I only want to invest in things that are really going to make a difference?
So other people think the way you do, Kathy, and so there are terms that get used, greenwashing, to present something as if it's environmentally friendly and positive when it's really not. Impact washing, to present something as if it's having this positive social community impact, even though it's really not. But That's okay. There will always be people who try to skirt the rules.
Yeah.
We'll look at the people who are creating the rules and then living up to them. So you even if you've never heard what a B corporation is, I know that in every pantry and bathroom and household represented here, you probably have products that are B corporations. So if you turn and look at the back of your Stonyfield yogurt or your Everyone's soap or your 7th generation toilet paper, you're going to see a circle with a B in it. And B stands for benefit, and it means social benefit. And so since about 2007, 2008, there's been this global movement. It started in the United States, but it's now all over, where companies have decided to voluntarily go for a certification that speaks to how they treat the environment, how they treat their workers, how they treat their community. And it's a pretty rigorous certification process. For the lawyers in the room, the B Corporation folks went so far as to have this become a corporate form in, I think we're up to like 38 states, including Delaware. So you can go for, as a company, a voluntary certification, or you can change your articles of incorporation to make it very clear to your investors, to your board members, to your senior leadership, everyone who has a financial stake in the company, that you're going to have a great company and you want your company to be a winner, be successful, but not at any cost. You're not going to pollute. You're not going to fail to pay health benefits to your workers. You're not going to abuse your position in the community for your financial bottom line. You're going to do these things in balance, and balance is something that everybody here is learning and practicing this week, right? So in the same way we seek mindfulness and balance coming to a place like the Golden Door, these are businesses that are seeking mindfulness and balance and wanting to work with investors who see the world the same way.
So do you think the social conscious side of business and the social conscious side of needs and arts is going to get bigger?
Absolutely. I mean, so just in dollar terms, 25% of all assets under management in the United States today are invested in a way that's socially responsible or having impact. So that means all the money that's invested, you take a quarter of it, and that's already thinking this way. As women, through their own work and through the projected inheritance over the next 20, 25 years, take control of the majority of private wealth, it's expected that this will only increase because women have been surveyed many times in many ways, and they indicate that it matters to them how the planet's going to be treated, what future their kids are going to have, and the next generation. So for those of you who have sons and daughters, grandsons and granddaughters, they don't just want to go and make money and then donate once a year. They want to be working at something that they care about. Yeah, and so they're looking to work at businesses that have values, that demonstrate and live their values. This is becoming not just a marketing ploy, as you were saying before, but the next generation, they're pretty pragmatic and they're pretty skeptical, and so they very much are looking for this. It's only socially responsible investing and socially responsible business practices are only going to grow.
But are you worried, and I agree with you, the new generation, beyond us, I think actually, the newer generations are so worried and so concerned about giving and taking care of things and taking care of it. But are you worried that with all of the sort of noise of that, the actual messaging will get lost? Will they actually be able to find those companies?
Well, so if you want to figure out where you're shopping, like I said, look at the product. If it has a B in a circle, they've been certified that they're doing this the right way. There are many both metrics and assessment tools to help you understand companies and whether the company has a set of values that they're truly living up to. As well as a number of investment vehicles where the fund manager, as part of their key strategy, specifies what they're going to be looking for regarding the environment, workers, community, et cetera. And you as an investor can say, well, I could invest in the S&P 500, or I could invest in the new socially responsible S&P 500 that Dow Jones opened about 6 months ago. The financial performance is expected to be the same, And if I go in the socially responsible index, I know that they're not going to invest in fossil fuels, they're not going to invest in tobacco companies, they're not going to invest in this list of things that a lot of people have come to believe are not helpful.
Right.
Yeah.
How can we bring social innovations into our communities? And that's sort of answering the question I'm going to actually do. We have interviewed incredible speakers, many aligned with the concept of social innovation. We've had video game creators here developing ways to improve our brains. We've had designers come in and clothing people come to our store for weeks, sustainable clothing, how we give back. But how can each of us, an individual, foster more of this innovation? I'm very focused this year about the communities. How do we talk to our neighbors and say, we live here, we want to support these people? How do we get the dialogue going?
Well, there are, as I mentioned before, these community development finance institutions. They're a very interesting way to understand what's happening around you. They invest in the small business leaders around you. Most of them have ways for us to participate. You buy a note product. It's something that's about 3-5 years long. You put your money in, you get your money back. You get 3, 4, 5% interest, and you know that your money is being used close to home in the community where you live. I'm sure many of you have donor-advised funds or working with your local community foundation. Those are all really great ways to understand what's a priority local to you. I live in the Hudson Valley of New York State, and the Berkshire Taconic Foundation is one of the community foundations in that region, and they have decided that the creative economy is a priority for them because you've got the Berkshires, you've got Tanglewood, Jacob's Pillow, you've got Bard College and their summer music festival. It's a place where there's a lot of artisanal food. The Culinary Institute of America has a school in the region, and so on and so on and so on. So this is a community foundation that's figured out not just generally what's great for that region, but the role that creativity can play in particular. So I would say your community foundation's often a really great lead for some of the things you can do if you want to be focused local to where you are.
So share some of your favorite companies.
Well, some of the social purpose businesses in the creative economy that we love at Upstart, as I mentioned, Hudson Valley. So one of my neighbors is an actress you may recognize, Mary Stuart Masterson. She was in Fried Green Tomatoes, a lot of popular movies from the 80s. So a few years ago, she moved up with her 4 very young children, and she's a working actor, her husband's a working actor. So she landed in the Hudson Valley, and immediately she was offered a TV series that was going to tape in Vancouver, not close to the Hudson Valley of New York State. And so she got into a conversation with the producer to say, well, why do we have to shoot in Vancouver? Can't we shoot here? And she, she's much more than a pretty face. She's absolutely entrepreneurial. That propelled her down a path where she worked with others and lobbied the state capitol so that there is now a tax credit to make it attractive. If you're a TV producer to cite your next project in the Hudson Valley, you get a tax rebate to work there. She started a nonprofit to train the folks. We all think of the stars or the writers or the director, but if you think of the credits that roll at the end of a movie or a TV show, every TV show creates 150 to 200 jobs. And guess what? There are 500 TV shows being shot in North America this year. So you do the math. There are a lot of people who are going to have an opportunity to work. So the nonprofit that Mary Stuart has set up is to train women, people of color, returning veterans, folks who are not the usual suspects to be able to work in these jobs, which, by the way, pay between $75,000 and $250,000 a year and have great health benefits. So the third part, so she got the tax credit, she's doing the training because you need to have a workforce there when people want to bring their project. And then the third piece is she's building some certified sound stages so that although you're coming to the Hudson Valley because there's the river and the mountains and the woods and it's all beautiful, you're going to have to do some interior shooting. And actually a condition of qualifying for the tax credit is you have to have a couple of days on a soundstage in the region. So this is an example of someone who, they have 2 slogans. One is go big and stay home. and the other is make local work. And so this is a creative person who's solving a problem for herself to be able to live where she works and be home for her kids, but she's also creating now a big economic opportunity for her neighbors, not just the folks who will get the jobs doing lighting and sound on these TV shows that she expects to attract to the region, but all the people who will be hotel rooms, meals, gas, all of these things.
all the
The economic
externals,
multiplier is extraordinary.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
So that's just one of our favorite projects.
We know happiness and gratitude are key components to wellness today. And a key component of that wellness is keeping the mind curious and caring. How do we create those conversations from the business sides? It really is more than profit. It's about our people, it's about our lands, about our legacies. I mean, at Golden Door, we have a farm stand. We actually sell produce every weekend to the people who live around here at half the cost you could buy it at any store. And it's all grown right here on our gardens, and it's a beautiful food. We try to think of every way we could touch the environment, the lands, and the peoples. But how does that conversation get even bigger?
Well, I came from a conversation just like the one you're describing in Park City, Utah at the beginning of the week. And there were probably 200 impact investors, folks who care about investing in the sorts of things we're discussing, and folks who are building the companies and building the funds that invest in the types of companies that we're talking about. That's just one of probably 50 top tier conversations, gatherings, convenings, conferences happening in America over the next 12 months around this topic of sustainable business, socially responsible, and impact investing.
You know, I'm so glad you're here. This is such an important thing to be discussing today. I'm so glad, and we're filming this. There's a famous quote, you're going to love this, it leads to this. A famous quote that says, "Goodness without knowledge is weak and feeble, yet knowledge without goodness is dangerous." How can we create, right? Isn't that a good one? I love that. I'm going to say goodness without knowledge is weak and feeble, yet knowledge without goodness is dangerous. How can we create the checks and balances in our communities to have both goodness and knowledge?
Well, that's kind of at the heart of the philosophy behind socially responsible investing, because money has power and influence, but if it's not used wisely and well, it can be detrimental, right? Or it can fail to live up to its potential to lead and do good things. And so there are many folks who are leading, contributing, helping, bringing along newcomers into this conversation. Happy, obviously, to talk to anybody about ways to get involved with this conversation at wherever you are. It's happening coast to coast. It's happening globally. It's pretty exciting because it's picked up significant momentum in the last 25 years.
Wow. Can you share some of the best advice you received along the journey?
Trust in Allah, but tie your camels. So I had mentioned to somebody that my 50th birthday, I became an entrepreneur, right? After a career of working at large, well-established, old institutions where I never had to worry if my paycheck was going to bounce. And I often sat across the table from people and I said, you should take more risk. You know, here I am telling you either what you should do with your venture capital fund or what you should do with your nonprofit, or, you should take more risk. And I realized that I needed to take some of that risk myself. And so it's kind of scary to cross over to be the entrepreneur. And luckily I've got some great advisors who have been entrepreneurs before me, and so that was one piece of advice. And then the other notion, and I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with this, there's something called the Stockdale Paradox. And I read about it in a book by Jim Collins, the Stanford Business School professor, and I'm sure people have come across this story elsewhere, but Stockdale was a prisoner of war, Vietnam prisoner of war, high-ranking military official, and he obviously made it through, got home, and in the interview, Jim Collins said, so what was your secret? How did you make it home when unfortunately so many other people, that was not their situation? It's like, were you optimistic? And he said, no, the optimists, they were the ones who didn't make it home, because they would say, we'll be home by Christmas, and Christmas would come and they weren't home. We'll be home by Easter, and Easter would come and they weren't home. And what about the pessimists? Were you pessimistic and doubting that you were going to make it out? He said, no, the pessimists, that their situation was even worse than the optimists. So what made it work? He said, holding the long-term belief that it was all going to work out okay, and trusting in that and focusing on that and visioning what that was, and at the very same time being completely pragmatic and practical and tactical about what I had to do for the next hour. And so as a new entrepreneur over the last 4 years, that's something I've thought about a lot. Absolutely believing in the importance of socially responsible investing, social purpose businesses, and most importantly, the place that I'm really working, this intersection of impact investing and the creative economy. So absolutely believing how important this is to have happen, and then being incredibly practical and pragmatic every minute.
Oh my goodness, what's next?
Well, so my organization's called Upstart CoLab. We're a nonprofit, and we've been at this for 4 years. We started with a lot of questions. We didn't know why all of this values-based capital had been overlooking artists and designers and other types of creatives. And so we thought, well, maybe there's a good reason. Maybe there are no artists starting investable businesses. Maybe impact investors really don't care about creativity that much. So we spent the last few years making the case, building a coalition of stakeholders who believe, like us, that this is important, and making it easier for people to invest their money in this way by bringing some vehicles to the marketplace that facilitate investment in the creative economy. And that's been good. When we re-upped for another 3 years to keep going, we realized we needed to change the balance of those 3 activities. So we're going to do a lot less of the case-making research reports, which is good, because if I write another research report. But we're really going to build the community. And so we're launching a member community of folks, impact investors, who believe, like us, in the power of creativity. So some of the folks in this community will be newcomers to impact investing, but they love the arts and they love creativity and they're passionate about it. Or they're creative people themselves who've made wealth and they want to engage and invest in this way. And some of the folks in the community will be quite experienced impact investors who just want to see great deals, like Upriver Studios, Mary Stuart Masterson's company that I was just describing, or Eline Media, or Greenbelt Hospitality, or Zeal, or Prima Donna, or this whole other list of fantastic social purpose businesses in the creative economy that we've been tracking. So we're building this member community of folks who want to be the pioneers and the evangelists and the ambassadors of this idea. And hopefully in the next 3 years, we'll make some great progress.
Well, I know this is the only place we could have these kind of conversations, but this is one of the best parts of our interviews. At the end of every single one of our interviews, we ask our talent and our guest to give everybody a golden nugget that you can take home, because she's out there all the time and she knows all kinds of things. So what is your golden nugget tonight for our guest to take home?
So if you have any questions about how your money is being invested, you should ask those questions to your wealth advisor. And if you don't understand the answer, you need to ask again, because this is not that complicated. And if you ask again and it's still not explained in a way that makes sense to you, I think you need to consider whether you change your wealth advisor. If you have been curious about this conversation about how to do well financially and do good in the world at the same time through your investments, ask your wealth advisor about socially responsible investing. And if they tell you, no, you're going to give up financial return, you're going to make less money, you don't want to do that, they actually don't know what they're talking about. And I'm happy to give you some facts and figures about outperformance or consistent performance between the socially responsible option and the conventional investment option. And right now, all of the Goldman Sachs's and the Morgan Stanley's and the Banks of America, they all have teams that 100% are focused on socially responsible investing. So ask to talk to somebody on that team. And if you love the arts and you're curious about how you can be investing for impact connected to the creative economy, talk to me, because your wealth advisor won't know about that yet.